And we should be live on YouTube now. Just gonna wait for that confirmation. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the Friday webinar. We've been doing this about every 2 weeks lately. And thanks for joining me today. I'm Derek Oger, the Executive Director with Conservatory Canada. And today we're going to have Andrew Harbridge and George Litterst talk through a back-end look at the editing process from our Mosaics Collection piano series that we've been unveiling as the year goes on. The grade 5 book is going to be ready shortly. We're just ordering proofs now today, and hopefully we have that in hands in the next week. So I'd say about 2 weeks yet before we can get those maybe on store shelves, and you should be able to order them through Andrew's website, I'd say in the coming week or so. Next Friday is Good Friday, so we're not going to have a webinar that week. But on Friday, April 25th, I'll give us the first look at the Mosaics Grade 5 book where I'll play through the Group 1 repertoire that day. So watch for that link again into your inbox, and then for other webinars going into May. If anyone has any questions, anyone that's joined us live here today in the Zoom room, feel free to throw those in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll stop and answer those as we go. Those of you who are watching on replay, welcome, and thanks for checking this out today. This promises to be an intriguing look at this back-end process that it's George, myself, and Andrew doing most of the heavy editing here. Andrew's daughter, Carissa Harbridge, is also doing a lot of the engraving, is also very responsible for the editing. And we have a number of other people in the background who are helping us out as well with various bits of information when it comes to different styles, especially the Baroque period, and they're giving us helping us make informed choices. So I think without saying too much more, George and Andrew, you two, thanks for joining us today. You've been doing the lion's share of this work, this investigative work, and as you pull the curtain back here on that process so the teachers understand how it works, we look forward to hearing what you have to say and how this is going to work. So I'll turn it over to you two now, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, well, before we get started, if I could just say both a thank you to Derek and to Andrew for including me in this process. I've personally, and my company, TimeWarp Technologies as well, has had a relationship with Conservatory Canada going back to 2008 with the e-exams and connecting students with examiners with internet MIDI. And several years ago, Andrew, who is independently publishing in print, approached me about getting Harbridge publications into SuperScore, and then that has brought me also now into this process with this new series. And so it's been just a lot of fun and a very meaningful experience for me to be working with both of these gentlemen on this series. I'm going to share my screen so that, Andrew, you can go ahead and get us started off here.
Yeah, I'll get us started off here. And George, it's a privilege to work with you too. I can't get over the depth of your knowledge on notation, and you're a big part of the perfection we've got going on with the series. So thank you very much. And you too, Derek. Your editing skills are fantastic. So I'm very, very proud of this series. And I think we have a very unique thing. We've got the hard copy scores. And we have the entire books in the iPad in SuperScore. And I almost forgot to mention that the Braille Society is translating all our music books. You can't see the dots, but this is covered in dots. They're putting the whole series into Braille as well. So for the visually impaired, you've got SuperScore. You can listen, you can slow it down, that sort of thing. Lots of help for someone in that situation. Also, keeping true to what the Conservatory has done over the past, we have a broad range of styles so that you are training your students to be have a broad spectrum of different styles. And it goes back to the Baroque era, lots of Baroque music right up to the present, with compositions being written in the last couple months showing up for the first time in the series. I forgot my thought there. So, anyways, that gives you a good idea of the series and how unique it is. I should mention all our the recordings are coming out on all the streaming services, which won't cost you anything to listen to. They'll be included in your streaming service. We've got Prep through 4 already in the streaming services. Now, George, maybe I can turn this over to you. You've got the first piece.
Yes. So we're going to be looking at quite a number of pieces today at all of the levels from Prep through level 5. And we're going to look at these pieces through several different lenses that have impacted the production of this series. One is the historical breadth that Andrew has mentioned. Another lens is the one of inclusiveness, locating musical gems that have been forgotten from the past. Issues of music performance, bringing forward good musical traditions from the past that are authentic to the times in which the music was composed. And we're going to be talking about the investigations that we've had to undertake to ferret out original manuscripts and first editions to be sure that we're presenting scores in the most authentic and reverent and helpful ways for the students. And we've had to set about quite a number of interesting investigations, which is the intrigue part of our title here today, Technology, Scholarship, and Musical Intrigue. And I hope that you'll enjoy that part of the presentation. The first piece we'll talk about is from the prep level. Now, this is a level in which there needed to be a number of arranged pieces to be able to exploit the whole range that was desired for this level. And I remember at one point, Andrew saying, you know, we need a piece in minor and we need something that's in 6/8 time. And we were a little bit short on the music from earlier times. And I came up with this one, this Marche pour les Matelots, the Sailor's March from an opera by Maureen Marais. I had known this tune as a Christmas tune, a rather obscure English Christmas tune. I've always been intrigued by Christmas tunes that are in minor keys. But long before this had ever become a Christmas tune, it was this March of the Sailors. And I'll just bring it up here to give you a little bit of a taste of what it sounds like on my iPad.
And
Here we go. And for pedagogical reasons and play along and the opportunity to play one hand while super score plays the other and so forth, we've got a little count off that you'll hear. I'll pause it there.
you mentioned earlier this was around at one time.
It has been exploited as a round in that Christmas context as well. Yes, so it's appeared in a number of different situations, but here on the screen, you're seeing on the left side, the original score that we ended up consulting written in handwritten manuscript. It was not a keyboard piece. It was from the opera. It's being performed here on the score by a number of different instruments. Oh, and Andrew, this is a good moment actually to mention that you have provided in at least the Super Score edition very often some video commentary about the history of the piece or of the composer. Why don't we just take a little listen to what we did for this one, which is the little video button in the upper right corner.
Marin Marais was a French composer and viol player who lived from 1656 to 1728. He was a prominent figure in the French music scene and made significant contributions to the development of French Baroque music. Marais is best known for his exceptional skills as a virtuoso on the viola da gamba, a stringed instrument popular during the Baroque era. Murray.
And I'll pause it there. So you get the sense that we've not only undertaken the musical scholarship to be able to produce the score going back to original sources, but we're trying to communicate as much of this as we can to the students themselves in this publication.
I just remembered something.
Yes?
We are producing composer stickers, and Murray
I'll
is this
stop
guy right
sharing
here.
so you can be a little bigger on the screen.
Okay,
Hold it up again.
is right here. And these sticker packs are available on the Wanless, Harbridge and Wanless website right now. If I can put that in. Great way to teach the composers and what they look like.
Absolutely.
There's a copy of our book.
So starting with this whole theme of the historical breadth of the series, we've gone back to the very early Baroque times with the previous piece. This is literally a sort of a hot off the press modern work. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, Lee passed away last August, and the 6 months before that, he was writing me every week saying, please send me some tunes. I want to write. And so one of the tunes is this one, On the Wings of the Dawn. It was a composition of mine. It's in the CCRS series, I think book 2. And anyways, he wrote this beautiful arrangement with a jazzy sort of sound to it. And you can see Chris has had to transcribe these scores. Sometimes we have a few doubts about what he wrote, and it was nice when we were able to ask him. So we have all of his latest compositions, and they'll be coming out. I think we've got one in each of the books so far, at least one.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Lee Evans, he died in his 90th year, and he was a wonderful pianist and especially a jazz educator. And up till the very end, he was still doing teaching at the college level and just producing original compositions and arrangements all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
So let's take a little listen to this arrangement of Andrew's piece, arranged by Lee Evans.
Can I mention that the hard copies are exactly the same as the Superscore copies, meaning you don't have the danger of a student learning two different fingerings on a piece. They both match. And I don't know if that's been done in many places where you could switch back and forth and not worry about that.
That's excellent. Now, let's start to talk a little bit more about original sources and the need to go back to the original sources. Of course, it's wonderful that in the case of Lee Evans, we both knew him personally as a contemporary composer and arranger. As part of the inclusiveness aspect of the series, Conservatory Canada selected a mazurka by Maria Simonowska, and we discovered something rather interesting about this. First of all, we had to track down the original edition. I was able to finally locate it in the Austrian National Library. And this Mazurka number 3 that you'll see at the top area of the screen is the one that was published. Very few marks of expression or performance indications. There are a few accents, and there are some arpeggiated chords there. And all of those things have been incorporated into the Mosaics edition of this work. But as a comparison, let me show you on the left side of the screen the same piece, which you can find on IMSLP. And if you compare it to the Superscore edition on the right, which of course matches the print edition, you'll notice that the version on IMSLP is in 3/4 time, whereas we're publishing it in 3/8 time. And if you had noticed on the previous slide, the original is actually in 3/8. So we've seen this piece published elsewhere in 3/4 time. I don't know whether explicit pedagogical thought has been behind making a change to the original, but we felt that it was important to really start with the original as presented by the composer, and then go from there, adding as necessary marks of expression and fingering to benefit the student. And of course, at the earlier levels, more of that editorial additions are important than they will be at later levels for sure. So you can see that fingerings have been added in the Mosaics score, as well as some slurs, but every indication of performance practice from the original is also incorporated into this score.
One thing interesting, I've had talked to people about Superscore, and they said, I haven't checked out that PDF reader. And I'm like, it's a whole lot more than a PDF reader. And those performances aren't a computer performance. There's a real person behind all of them.
Well, that is certainly true. In fact, we can demonstrate that with the piece that we were just discussing. I'll bring it up here on my iPad. And as you watch the score and listen to the playback, you can even take a look at the tempo indication in the lower right corner that shows the beats per minute, and you'll notice that it's fluctuating as it would in any human performance. And you've got the flexibility of muting the hands and changing the tempo and doing things of that nature. That one, by the way, looking at the score on the screen, you'll notice that it doesn't say it was composed by Maria Simanowska. It says arranged by. And Andrew had pointed out when I found the score originally right away that it was stated right there on the cover that these were arrangements by Simanowska. And so we've credited the authorship accordingly. Everybody teaches pieces by Daniel Gottlob Turk. He was quite a well-known educator in Germany in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. On the left, you can see the original piece number 25 is the one that has been included in the Mosaics series here. And he does put in a couple of fingerings, and there are just a couple of slurs. But beyond that, not a lot of musical guidance. And you can see in the score on the right that everything from the original has been included, plus some additional helpful performance guidances.
This one also has a history video. It shows Turk's birthplace and the textbook he wrote on teaching music.
In fact, we could take a brief look at your video. We'll switch back over. I'll also note that this piece is in 3/8 time. It's another one that uses that time signature. So here's the piece itself. And we go over to the video, and this is what we get.
Daniel Gottlob Turk, born in 1750 in Germany, was an amazing composer, teacher, and music expert during the classical era. He loved music from a young age and became known for his incredible piano skills and clever compositions. Turk wasn't just a composer, he also wrote a famous book called Klavierschule, which helped people learn how to play the piano better.
Yeah, I think most young people would be into these videos.
Oh, I think so. I mean, it really provides some wonderful context for the music that the students are learning. Now, you'll notice in this piece, we've also carefully catalog the work. Very often you'll see works by Turk that are, a title has been provided and you wonder, well, where did that come from? Supposing I want to look up more about it, and you don't really get any information if there's no opus number or other kind of catalog. And we've indicated here that it is piece number 25 from a publication called 120 Hand Pieces for the Beginning Keyboard Player. And this issue of properly cataloging the material has been one that we've had to grapple with. For example, when you take a look at this Sonatina in C by Jacob Schmidt, you'll notice a score on the left side that we pulled off of IMSLP. It suggests that this piece is opus 249, number 1. Andrew, I think you found another publication using yet another opus number.
We have 3 opus numbers. There was a 207, and then we ended up with the opus 107. It was the earliest edition, 1870, I believe.
That's right. I had found in a German library an edition from Schubert and Niemeyer of this work. I would like still to find an earlier publication. I mean, Jacob Schmidt died in 1853, and one would presume that this was published in his lifetime. So far, I haven't been able to locate that, but we did get back this far, and it was published as a opus 107, number 2. So that's the number that we have gone with for this one.
And this was one of the ones that were altered quite a bit. The other publisher did not mention that they actually changed the melody in places on this one. What you're getting with the Concan is what was in the 1870 version.
So what I'll do here is we can illustrate that, because we found discrepancies in the scores, both I think in measures, 8 and 16, the ends of
Measure 7 was completely rewritten in this publication I have here.
Okay. So this is what it presumably should sound like. So if you found it in another publication, you might have heard something different there in measure 7.
Mm-hmm. And we have been very good at mentioning if we've made little changes to things. And there might be the assumption in other publications that changes haven't been made just because it doesn't say so. So we've tried to be as honest as we possibly can with any changes.
Now, very often we've encountered the situation in which we know a piece exists because we've seen it in other publications and we think it's a good one to include in this series. But boy, coming up with the original source has been a problem. And if you really want to do things correctly, you can't look at somebody else's publication of a public domain work and assume, well, that must be the original, and so we could just copy that and do the same thing. Andrew, you thought you had access to original source of this, but there was some confusion. Tell us about that.
Well, for one thing, you can't find the second book anywhere online.
So in other words, this is from Opus 12, written as Opera 12 in Roman numerals, but many people don't realize there's actually 2 books of Opus 12.
Yes, and I searched and searched, and I figured the library in London would have this. It's an English composer, but they didn't. So I had to pass this along to George, and you were able to locate the other copy. I don't know if you know offhand. Was it from Brussels?
It was. And I found it at the Bibliothèque du Conservatoire Royal de Bruxelles.
Good French there.
Yes, thank you. And it was, wasn't terribly expensive to purchase a scanned copy of it. And so what we got, just get back over to my slides here, was this. And you would expect that this would be available in the British Library. And for all I know, Andrew, it may actually still be there. unfortunately, the British Library, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe closer to 2 years ago, suffered a bad cyber attack, and they're still in the process of recovering their online assets. And whereas it in the past has been very easy to get access to digital reproductions of old materials, we just don't have that kind of access from the British Library currently. So anyway, now we can see that there's two covers. They both look the same, but there are some little differences in the detail. One says book 1 and the other says book 2. The attempt to say book 2 here is in Roman numerals.
This is what you call a cost-cutting measure.
Yeah, they basically just scratched in an extra numeral there next to the 1 to try to turn it into Roman numerals 2. So that was kind of amusing. But,
yeah, none of this helps us locate the scores.
No, but the piece is a wonderful piece. We'll share it here for you. And you'll notice that we have titled it Siciliana, as it was originally published from Sonata 3, Opus 12, Book 2, fully cataloged. But Andrew put an asterisk on that, pointing out that later publishers added a title, Little Shepherd Boy.
This piece is unique for group 1. I know in the past I've searched for pieces an adult student with maybe a little slower fingers could handle, and some of the Baroque music is tricky because the rhythm of it just motors right along. And this one was just a little nicer for that adult student to handle. She did very well on this piece on the exam, by the way.
So we've also run into issues of, well, who really was the composer? So one of the pieces that we wanted to include, and Andrew, am I correct that this had been in the prior Conservatory Canada series?
That is correct. The series before the Millennium series.
Okay. It's an Allegro in G major, thought to be by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. And it's really a wonderful piece. We should just refresh our understanding of what it sounds like. Let's take a moment to do that. And Andrew, I think you told me that in the prior publication that first ending with the little scale run wasn't there previously.
That's right. It was cut.
So as best we know, that is appropriate and is part of the original piece, but that still begs the question of, well, is this really by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach? Now, as it turns out, there's a really wonderful website, cpebach.org, which is an organization that's been supported by the Packard Foundation. I think it's Packard, as in Hewlett and Packard, or maybe I'm getting the names backwards. But in any case, they've, over a period of quite a number of years, done just an amazing job of ferreting out all of C.P.E. Bach's compositions. And you can go and locate anything on that website and download PDF versions. It's really very, very nice. And if you look very closely here at the title in the Superscore edition, there's two different catalog numbers. There's the H328, and then there's the more traditional WQ attribution. WQ, I'm always blanking on it. Oh, Alfred I practice my pronunciation of the last name earlier, and I've now lost it here. Watt Queen, I think. Anyway, this WQ cataloging has kind of been the standard. And in the cataloging, 116 is a list of sort of miscellaneous pieces. And then there's in that list number 1, 2, 3, etc. And this is number 49. But if you go on to the CPE-BOK web.org website, you will not find this one. And you won't find a number of others in that 116 series. And so that suggests that that organization doesn't think that this is an original composition at all. And it turns out there is a gentleman who, back in the late 18th, early 19th centuries, spent a good part of his adult life collecting every single manuscript he could find of music by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. I believe this one that you're seeing on the left, which is our source for this, was part of what he had collected. But there's uncertainty as to whether it's actually authentic Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, because when music is circulating in manuscripts like that, oftentimes somebody will put on the name of a famous composer and make the piece sound more impressive because of the name of the composer that's associated with it. Either way, it's a really wonderful, well-constructed piece. And if you look carefully at the score on the left, you can see that there are some staccato marks and there is one slur. All of those things, including a trill later on, you can see on the page as well, have been included in the Mosaics score, as well as fingering and other pedagogical guidances that are appropriate at this level. Now, another piece that we might wonder about is this Sonatina in G, alleged to be composed by Ludwig van Beethoven. I'm sure everybody knows this one by sight, but we might just take a quick listen to the beginning of it. This is one that I researched a number of years ago for a separate Superscore publication by TimeWarp. This is what the beginning sounds like. And you'll notice that I did perform, I'm the one who recorded this one, perform the appoggiaturas on the beat, taking half the value of the subsequent note. In my research, that I believe to have been the practice at the time that this was composed. Now, that gets back to the issue of, well, who really composed it and how do we know? Well, Henley has put out a remarkable 2-volume series that it's unfortunately in German if you don't speak German, and you have to translate to get the data that you need out of it. But they've cataloged where essentially every scrap of paper that's associated with Beethoven is located everywhere in the world. And I had used that information, in fact, in correspondence with an editor at Henley. The guy had very graciously sent me photocopies of the segment of the book that spoke specifically to this. And I found that there were 2 places in the world where there was a copy of the very first publication. And many people for a long time thought that this was not by Beethoven because it was published by a publisher that had no known relationship with Beethoven. It's Louis Rudolphus in Altona, Germany. And many had thought that it was published after Beethoven's death, and again, making it suspect. But it turns out, well, this was published in 1807 by Rudolphus Adolphus. And so while we don't know that there's a firm connection to Beethoven, we do know it was published out in the open during the last 20 years of Beethoven's life, and we don't know of any complaints that he had about it. And it was still early in the classical period in which it was the common practice, as my understanding is, that one would play these appoggiaturas on the beat taking value from the subsequent note. So that's how we've approached this particular score. And then we have another interesting situation here with Muzio Clementi. And Derek had very kindly hosted a webinar that featured myself and Arthur Houle, a wonderful pianist and Clementi scholar, on whose work I kind of pyramided my own work on Clementi. Arthur had brought to my attention that Clementi had originally published his 6 progressive sonatinas, opus 36, in 1797. And there was an original edition, had no fingering, from Longman and Broderup. And then very quickly thereafter, there were fingerings applied, and the cover bragged that it was actually fingered by the author himself. Longman and Broderup went bankrupt. Clementi ended up being the owner of the subsequent company. And this was a wildly popular set of pieces and was reprinted many times with slight little changes along the way. But roughly around 1813 or so, there was a 5th edition that was published in which Clementi rewrote substantially the music, including in 14 of the 17 movements, taking advantage of an additional half octave at the top end of the piano. At the time he had published the original publication, the standard pianos were 5 octaves, but by 1813, it was much more common that one would be buying a 5.5 octave instrument. And so he revised things substantially. And I'd like to just give you a little taste of this. I was really quite thrilled that Derek and Conservatory Canada had elected, with the various Clementi movements, to go with the final decisions by Clementi as to how the music should be played. So I'm going to show you, and you can see with Superscore, it's nice, you can resize the music. I'm going to start playback right here at this very familiar sonatina, and I'm going to do it at a slower speed. And just listen to this part. Oh, that crackled a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me do that again. So this is not from the Mosaics publication. This is from an independent TimeWarp publication, which we published the original and the revised. But you heard how measure 7 works. If we listen to it in the revised version from the same spot, again, slowing it down. And
Quite different.
Just little twist there. Now that little change represented more of an represented an artistic decision, a revision. It wasn't a revision that was a result of the instrument becoming larger in terms of its range, particularly in the upper area. But if we go back to the original and listen to the development, which I'll play at regular tempo, we have this in the original. And in the revised, this is what we have. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to put this at 100% tempo. So not only does he get up into a higher range in the development, but segueing back into the recapitulation, the melody starts 1 octave higher in the recap than it did in the original. So those are some of the kinds of changes that you're going to see as these various sonatina movements by Clementi appear in this series. So what do we have next here to talk about? Oh, a horseback ride. Is this really a horseback ride, Andrew? I thought maybe this is a sleepy piece.
Yeah.
About this.
Yeah, there's a lot of people call this a lullaby or a cradle song, and it was quite a search for this one. It looks to be a common folk tune that first appeared in an opera about 400 years, 300, 400 years ago. And the title translates, I was asleep while I dreamed. And I think that's where a lot of people have got the title that it's a lullaby or a cradle song. But to me, it sounds much more like a hunting song with the da 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 dum da 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 dum. And George, you sang it a completely different way yesterday.
Da,
I won't.
da, 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 da. That's
So
what it would have
anyway,
to be if it was a lullaby, I think.
so we opted for the upbeat version, and it reminded me so much of the bugle at the beginning, and the rhythm sounds like a horseback ride.
And one, I think, could theoretically go a good bit faster if you did
Yeah.
wanted to. That's one of the nice things you can do in the Super Score edition. You could play around with the recorded tempo and, you know, experience different approaches interpretively to the work. So this one was interesting in that in our research, we were able to come up with this manuscript edition of it. So we had a basis for getting the notes right. And we were able to determine that, this is based on a folk tune. And this folk tune has been arranged by other composers as well, including Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. He wrote a long set of variations on this. And in fact, Kernberger also wrote variations, and what's being presented here in the Mosaic series is the theme from this set of theme and variations. But what I have not been able to find anywhere, and including consulting a good pianist friend of mine from Germany, is any record of what the original folk tune words were that come from this piece. I know in the 19th century, other words have been associated with it, but what were the words that would have been known in the 18th century, known to Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach or Johann Philipp Kernberger? I don't know. And that's another mystery we want to keep working on. So, Andrew, up until just a couple of years ago, had you ever known of a British composer who dressed like this and was of African descent?
No, I'd never heard of Ignatius Sancho before.
Quite a remarkable story behind this man. He was born apparently on a slave ship in the 1720s as the ship was leaving Africa for the New World. Eventually, he ends up, his father presumably commits suicide, his mother dies of disease. He gets shipped to England and given to three sisters who are living together in a suburb of London, and somehow becomes emancipated. It's quite an involved story we can't get into today, but he does eventually become a property owner. He gets married, has a family, and as a property owner, he owned a grocery store. He was the first person of African descent to ever vote in a parliamentary election. And he also was known to, not to so much to the music world, but he was known to the historic world, the world of historians, as a so-called man of letters, because he was a very prominent writer, having quite a dialogue with upper echelons of British society, and was an advocate a passionate advocate for the abolition of slavery. But he did self-publish 5 volumes of music, and several of the pieces from his 12 country dances of 1779 are now published in the Mosaics series. And they're really wonderful little pieces. Just glancing at the music, you might say, well, isn't that kind of a similar level to some of the easier pieces in the Anna Magdalena Bach notebook? And I'd say yes, although maybe the approach in terms of having to move your hand around from hand position to position and take advantage of the articulation in doing that would be perhaps a little bit different. On the left, you can see what the original publication looked like. That actually included the dance steps that dancers would, in a group situation, dance when this music is played. And I'll give you a little taste of what the music sounds like. This is Bushy Park from 12 Country Dances by Ignatius Sancho. I'm going to attempt to skip the repeat here. So, absolutely delightful music, in my, well, not so humble opinion, I guess I'd say.
We have some other Black composers who have been neglected: Nathaniel Dett and Frances Johnson, and many women composers who wrote fabulous pieces that have fallen out of use. We've tried to revive as well.
So this is a minuet from the Peste de Clavecin by Elizabeth Jacquette de la Guerre. And you can see on the left, it's fascinating publication with a lot of ornamentation. You'll see these little squiggles, a little hard to probably see in this webinar. I was pleased that a decision was made to maybe reduce the number of these a little bit for practical publication here in this Mosaic series. But I think the end result has worked out very well. And I know Derek had sought some performance practice guidance from an authority who's helped out with this. So that is our minuet by Elizabeth Jacquette de la Guerre.
Is this one of the ones that are also, you can play them on the, have it played on the harpsichord? We have a number of pieces that are harpsichord or piano performances.
In the Super Score edition, yes, yeah. And you can switch between them. And I had not yet put the harpsichord into this one, but that is a revision that it's on my to-do list. So you can be certainly counting on that. Andrew, you've been able to coax some of the contemporary composers into actually performing their works to be and have their performances embedded in the Super Score.
That is correct. The Gibsons, a married couple, Kevin and Angelina, have been really terrific at supplying a lot of scores. And when you're hearing this barcarolle played, it is the composer.
So this is another approach to scholarship where it's possible to have an actual performance by the composer. In the interest of time, I'll have to pause it there, but it's a wonderful performance. And I think it does a lot to connect the student to the music and to the composer when we have performances like that. And in the case of composers from earlier times, of course, we don't have the benefit of their performances, but we do bring in master performances as examples. Louise Farranc was one of two women who were on the faculty at the Paris Conservatoire in the middle of the 19th century. And she published quite a number of books of piano etudes that were used in conservatories all over Europe. And this is an absolute gem that the Mosaics editorial staff chose to include. And I'd like to play this one for you. And while we've got that one up, I'd like to play just one more. We don't have a slide for this one, but this is a little waltz, the little singing waltz from 7 Easy Pieces by Marie Jael. And this is another one that it was a little bit of a tricky one to track down. The set of 7 pieces was published in 1924, and I was not able initially to find that edition anywhere, but I did discover that it was part of an earlier technical collection that she had published in the last decade of the 19th century. But that publication had undergone 2 versions, and her set of pieces were not in the original version, but in the updated version. And so it really took quite a lot of digging to get that. And eventually, in correspondence with the French National Library, I was able to discover that even though it was not explicit in their catalog, that they did have the publication from 1924, which happened to match the early one that I had found. And so we were able to base this on authentic sources. And here's just a little taste of another unfamiliar piece. And I'll mention that in this particular case, this is an interesting example in which all of the fingering comes from the original edition. Since she had published it as part of an album that was really devoted to piano technique, she was quite explicit in terms of what she wanted for fingering, and that's what we have produced here in this edition for Mosaics. So, Andrew, I think that's brought us to the end of our presentation, the formal part anyway. There is one question I see in the Q&A wanting to know, what is the level of wings?
5. Level 5. Which will be out. We're getting the a proof made today, and if it looks good, we should have them in hard copy in a week.
Oh, very good.
So we're very close to level 5 being out. Oh,
well,
okay.
Derek, hopefully you can understand that Andrew and I have been on quite an adventure here with these pieces, and I'll have to tell you, it's an addicting process to have a chance to sort of dig back into the past, get out the magnifying glass, put on the Sherlock Holmes hat, and try to figure out the details of these pieces.
So one question I have for you, George, specifically, I know you've helped out a lot by looking for these sources. When you contacted one of the European libraries, for example, can you just give us sort of a rough synopsis about how that process works? How do you go about reaching out to a library to inquire if they have an original score?
Okay, so in the case, let me start with the easier case in which you go online and you can search the library and actually find the thing. Many of these larger libraries have a formulated process where you can go through a web page and say what it is that you want, put in your credentials, and promise to pay for it. Sometimes you have to pay up front. Sometimes it's a commitment to pay after you've actually received the goods, which is very nice. In the case of the one from the French National Library, it was kind of an odd thing. They had a more contemporary edition that their system incorrectly allowed me to request a copy of. And I was wondering about that, but I went ahead and requested it. And then I heard back from them saying, oh, no, I'm sorry, we can't actually provide that to you. And I responded back about what it was I was really looking for. And that set them off into a little further search, and they came up with what I wanted. So that one was a little bit of an accident. But I think if you were to probe the website, you'd find a source of contact that you could just simply send email to. And using tools for translation that are available to us, whether it's Google Translate, DeepL, or I know on the Mac, there's kind of a built-in translation option. It's pretty easy to write to one of these libraries in their language, but many of them are quite happy to accept your English, but they may write back to you in German or French, and translating is really pretty easy. So it's been a fun cultural exchange.
And how do you know where to start? How do you know which library to go to first to look for a score?
Well,
Throw a dart.
In my case, I've just kind of been a bumbling bull in the china shop for a period of years. And then as I've figured out, well, this place has stuff and this one has stuff, I've kept a little spreadsheet of information for myself. So I have some go-to places now that I try. There is an organization called RISM, R-I-S-M. I think it's Swiss-based, that is attempting to be kind of a collective card catalog for a lot of these libraries. Now, they're by no means comprehensive, but very often you can start your search there, and they can point you in some cases to a library that has a particular work in a certain edition. So I find that website difficult to navigate. I often find myself going around in circles, and at some point I really need to sit down with a bona fide PhD educated musicologist and ask, how are you supposed to navigate this RISM site? Because
Right.
I kind of bumble my way through it. But anyway, that's a resource.
That's good to know. Okay.
Can I do some more show and tell?
Yeah, please, Andrew. Yeah.
So we have composers on the bag. A great music bag for your students to be organized, put all their Mosaic books in, and bring to class. If people are interested, just reach out to the website. And we're waiting for a sale from the people that actually print these. And then we can get a really good price to pass on to the customer. My daughter, Sharia, does all the drawing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrew, what is the website? Is it DeborahWanlessMusic.com still?
Yes, or we finally decided on a name. It's Harbridge and Wanless Music.
Right.
So that is the official name from now on.
Is that the new URL as well then?
I'm pretty sure either one will get you there.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I'm very sorry if I'm misleading you.
No, you're probably right. The search engines do point in the right direction these days, no matter what we type in, it seems.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank both of you. And what we're going to do is we're going to stop the live stream here. Thanks to those of you who are watching on the replay. Hopefully you can join us 2 weeks from now when we get our first peek into all of the grade 5 repertoire, or at least the group 1 repertoire. And have a happy Easter as well. And we'll stop the live stream.